Let us start by creating our C# web application that will be working as our web API, and under that it will be having entity framework. So for that, first of all, open Visual Studio IDE. Click on create new project. Now it will ask you what kind of a project you want to create. So always remember, we are creating a C# web application with entity framework. Okay. So pick this particular template. There are many other confusing templates, but we want ASP.NET Web Application along with .NET Framework along with C# language. Okay. Other confusing templates are like this one. It has everything common except that it is in Visual Basic. And this one has everything in common except that it does not have the .NET Framework. So please choose your template very carefully. ASP.NET Web Application, .NET Framework and C# language. Double click. Now it will ask you where do you want to create it. So as I told you, we want to create it over here. So I'll just copy this path and I'll paste it over here. Okay. Now solution name can be given as DAL, and that will create that DAL folder. And inside the DAL folder, the project that we want is service. So we will be conveniently calling it as DAL service. And that is why this nomenclature. DAL will be the folder name, and inside that service will be the project. Pick the latest version of .NET available at your time. Say create. Now you will be given a lot of templates. Again, this can confuse a lot of people, but please pick empty template because it won't create unnecessary files. We can always create more files as and when required, but it's always a good practice to keep your project as lean as possible. So pick empty. But along with that, we also need Web API. What Web API will do is when you create a controller, it will add a lot of things to that controller, like a lot of action methods will get added automatically. So please select Web API. Okay, empty Web API, hit enter. And this project got created. Now, the project that got created has only two basic important files, and those are Web API config and global.asax. So let us see what these files do. So let us see what your Web API config file does. Web API config file has various configurations for your Web API. So here, for example, you see a configuration about routing. So what it is saying is when I say localhost/API/something, then that something is actually the controller name. Okay, and then if I say /something, then that something is something called as ID, and it is an optional parameter. So that kind of configuration is put in place over here for routing. Likewise, I can also put other configurations, like for example, if you want the output of this API to be in the form of JSON and not in the form of XML, then you can write such configurations over here. So this file has that kind of configurations for your Web API. Okay, and now how does it get used? It gets used by global.asax file. So notice here that global.asax just has application start. This is the entry point of your program. Like every program has public static void main, right? Some place where it starts execution. So your Web API starts execution from application start. And the first thing that it is doing is it is setting the global configuration as per the configuration given in this particular file, Web API config. And it is basically calling Web API config's register method, which is this particular method that you just saw. So this is how your project structure is. It does not have many references at the moment, but we will be adding those as and when we require them.